Hey guys, wanted to go over some fight news recently. So the first thing I'd like to go over is UFC 308. UFC 308, I chose Holloway to win, and I chose Robert Whittaker to win over here, and I chose Ankalaev to win. I'm lucky I got one of three at least. um, so we'll start with this fight right here. Ankalaev. I thought Ankalaev looked really solid. I think Rocket is one of those guys who has all the physical gifts in the world except for power, it seems like. He just couldn't get Ankalaev to back up. Basically turned it into kind of a kickboxing match, and Ankalaev just walked him down with his cross. And also, it was kind of weird. I think Rocket won the first round, but his cornermen, I think, were telling him that he was up two, if I recall, something like that. I thought that was odd. I think it's bad cornering. You can't. I don't know. There's a lot of coaches that don't like to tell their fighters what they don't want to hear. I've actually had this experience one time where I was in someone's corner and I was with another guy who would cornered this guy, right? So yeah, I'm not gonna name names, but it was you know I'm in this guy's corner. I'm kind of helping this dude train for this camp, and I'm coaching him, right? And then he has this other guy who has coached him a long time. And anyways, I'm yelling out stuff, and the guy next to me during the fight goes, "Hey, like don't be so, basically don't be so negative. He doesn't like negative stuff. Like try to give him positive things." And I'm like, "Bro, like he needs to hear what he needs to hear. I don't fucking care." So, I think there's a lot of coaches out there that kind of have this like uh, I don't know. There's a lot of fighters with really, really, really exceptionally fragile egos out there, and it's kind of crazy. I've run into it throughout the years. I've actually coached guys. Usually, what ends up happening is if a guy comes to me and I start coaching him, I will, especially if he's been around for a while. Like if he's brand new, fuck him. You get to deal with my how I am. But I get guys that come to me initially, and sometimes I'm like, hey, how much criticism do you want? Like how much of a coach do you want me to be? Like, do you want me to say every single thing that I see, or do you just want like broad strokes, like that kind of stuff? Some guys can't handle you being like, you're too heavy on your front foot, you're dropping your left hand too much, your chin's too much in the air, your reflexes are bad, we need to work on that. You don't have enough power. You could just start going down the lines on them, and they just can't mentally handle it. There's a lot of fighters out there that are shockingly fragile mentally people, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, fighting kind of brings in a certain group of athlete. I think fighting kind of draws in people who are broken in a lot of cases. There's a reason that a lot of people who grew up in like horrendous environments or bad households or went to prison, that kind of stuff, end up in fighting. And it's because there feels like there's a natural draw to do it, but a lot of those people also have zero emotional maturity, so their ability to actually take criticism is incredibly low. Anyways, the only reason I said that long spiel that I just made right there is because I wonder if Rocket's one of those guys. I don't know if he is, but he kind of gives me the crazy girl eye vibes, if you know what I mean. Where you meet a chick and you're just like, oh, you're fucking crazy. Like every time I see him in an interview, he just looks so just like he just looks fucking nuts. And I bet he's a really nice guy. I don't know, but that being said, I just wonder when your cornermen are kind of I don't know, lying to you. I mean, it felt like pretty obvious. I guess lying to you is the right word. To me, it's like you gotta kind of either that's a cornerman problem or that's a you problem. Um, anyways, back to Ankalaev. Ankalaev looked really solid. I think he is currently obviously the number one contender against Alex Pereira. He's the only one that anybody's going to be, uh, I wouldn't say interested in seeing. I think there's people that maybe are interested in seeing him face the other, or Alex Pereira facing other people. But I think like if you want to really cement Alex Pereira as like the guy at 205, I think he has to fight Ankalaev, and he has to win. Um, I do feel like Ankalaev's had to work really hard just to get to this point. And at this point, it's kind of It's just kind of what it is. He should be fighting Alex Pereira for the belt. It's obvious. There's no question in my mind that it should be him. I will say this too. I feel like Jan Blachowicz gets kind of screwed in this situation because he had a really close fight with Ankalaev. He had a really close fight with Alex Pereira, and he's beaten Izzy when Izzy came up from 185. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it very much. I think the UFC just strictly, I think the UFC really just doesn't want a 40-plus-year-old light heavyweight champion. But Jan is underrated, and I feel like he really gets shit on. So sucks to him, but it's life. Dana White, UFC, they're a bunch of scumbags a lot of times, anyways. So it's kind of what it is. All right, so we are on to Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. So Chimaev keeps his O. He goes 14-0. I think what he has 13 finishes, right? Because he didn't finish Usman. So that makes Usman even more impressive if you think about it. But besides that, I picked Robert Whittaker to win. The reason was I just thought that if Robert Whittaker could survive the first round, Chimaev couldn't stand with him. And Chimaev tends to gas. Like, he looks like he gasses out really hard. He pushes really hard in the first round. He's a sprinter. He's not a long distance guy. So I chose Robert Whittaker. I thought in stand up it was going to be obviously Robert Whittaker. But Robert Whittaker's faced very high level wrestlers before, guys that could get him down. And he's always been able to pop back up, and he's actually been able to take those guys down sometimes. So I kind of figured after seeing Chimaev struggle with Usman, obviously one of the best 70s of all time, but still he's a 170. In my head, I'm like, well, Robert Whittaker, former champion, he's got to be able to make it happen. He's a bigger guy. It's not going to be the same when you're dealing with that difference in size. And boy, I was wrong. So, shockingly, Chimaev got a takedown almost immediately, which he tends to get with everybody. The position he puts guys in, the pressure he puts them under is crazy. Yeah, I mean, his grappling is top tier, and I mean, he takes these naked shots from really far away and still gets guys down from so far back. It's really impressive. I think he knows that once, so there's usually a black octagon inside the octagon. It's a little line on the ground. I think he knows once somebody's foot touches that, or is right near that, he knows that he's like, I can shoot through that line all the way to the cage, and I know I can. It's got to be like a, not quite this level, but it's got to be like a Jordan Burroughs style double leg where, I mean, when he drops in, he just knows how far he can run through you. And I feel like Chimaev kind of just knows, like, once he drops down, he knows how far he can go before that train kind of stops. And once he gets these guys near the cage, man, he just runs them through. And it's really impressive. So the other crazy thing was obviously the way it ended. So a lot of people I saw immediately post stuff about, oh, the elbows did it, and that's what messed up his jaw and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Everybody wants to have a theory right away, or a hypothesis right away without actually knowing what happened. I think a lot of people like to post stuff really fast. So what actually happened? This is Robert Whittaker's teeth here on the left and right. And this is his lower three teeth. So you can imagine his jaw was here, like his teeth were here, and it got crushed to here. I've honestly never seen that. So I trained a guy who broke his jaw, actually, and then a friend of mine, of all people, actually fixed his jaw, because my friend does facial reconstructive work. And yeah, I mean, he split it like this, so it snapped the jaw. Like, if you imagine, these are your teeth, right? And you imagine basically it went like this, right? Like all of his teeth in his jaw did that. Robert here lost the middle of his fucking jaw. So like if this is his three teeth in the front here, they just broke, and this part of his jaw broke up. I don't actually know how you do that. That's kind of wild. I mean, he basically just has two pieces of his jaw moving like this with the middle part floating. Um, so apparently, Robert Whittaker has had a lot of jaw issues forever, and he actually made the joke even about it afterwards, and he said that, well, I guess it's a good time to actually get it fixed appropriately, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's been a problem for a while. I think it's apparently always been a problem. I've heard stuff about him talking about how it's always been an issue. Um, I'm not trying to take away from Hamzat's powerful squeeze. It's no joke. But I don't, I mean, so if you get somebody and you crank them across the face and you crush down really hard, you can absolutely like dislocate their jaw. I could even see you maybe breaking somebody's jaw if you're like a Hamzat level of like crush. I just don't see you dislocating, not dislocating, but snapping someone's teeth out and up like that. Um, unless there was already a problem. Like I could see him crushing his jaw and like it snapping like here or like here, or like single snap, but not snapping like in two places and the jaw coming back and in. So I just think he already had like an issue there, and then the pressure caused it to like snap, right? Um, but that still doesn't change the outcome of this fight. Really impressive. So, what do I think is next? Um, Hamzat should probably fight for the belt. I like Sean Strickland. I like Sean Strickland probably more as a personality than I do actually like watching his fights. I think Sean tends to hype up his fights and then kind of come out and put on a very clinical uh, fight, which is fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But a second ago, we just talked about Ankalaev here, and Ankalaev doesn't have like a crazy mass amount of fans. Um, and Ankalaev is pretty clinical too, So I feel like Sean Strickland comes out, he kind of jabs, he teeps. His strategy is good. He doesn't get hit much, you know what I mean? His longevity in that style should allow him to fight for a long time. It's probably some of the reasons he's been at the UFC so long. I think what really made him popular was all the stuff he says outside, right? He says, the classic scenario. He says what we think, As lame as that sounds, there's a lot of people who feel like that, right? He is known, or I'm sorry, another reason it probably is because he's known with the Izzy scenario, right? So he was brought in to lose. He made fun of Izzy. A lot of people kind of were sick of Izzy at that point. I think Izzy as a fighter is a good fighter. He's an amazing fighter, and people shit on his actual ability. But Izzy as a person is cringy and like hard to deal with and unlikable, frankly. I mean, the guy molests animals. Like, come on, man. Again, it's like I could look at John Jones and tell you I think he's a good fighter, but there's no question in my mind he's an absolute piece of shit as a human being. I'm not going to be, I could separate those two, but so I think a lot of people felt like Sean Strickland coming in and kind of beating, not kind of, but dominantly beating Izzy when he was brought in to lose, especially in the press conference and then in the fight, is kind of poetic justice. I think a lot of people were just kind of sick of Izzy at that point. Um, but I mean, at this point, Chimaev is a lot more interesting matchup for DDP than Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland and DDP had a fight. It was a good fight, but it was pretty back and forth. It was pretty tight. Some people think Sean Strickland won. I don't know about that. Um, it's hard to say. It was close. I think when it's close, you can't complain about the way it goes. And Sean Strickland, does have close fights. Do I want to see Sean Strickland and DDP fight again? Yeah. But would I rather see Chimaev fight DDP? Absolutely. I'd be a lot more interested. Who would I take? I'd have to do video breakdown. I'm gonna have to do a video breakdown for Ankalaev too if he ends up facing Pereira. I would probably take if we're talking about the Pereira fight. I'm kind of leaning towards Ankalaev weirdly. Ugh. And then if I had to go with the DDP and Chimaev fight, I'm gonna lean slightly towards Chimaev. Um, just because DDP does do a lot of like he does a lot of kind of dumb shit, here and there, and he kind of gets into these like wild positions, and you know, he does a lot of like wild stuff, right? And I feel like anytime you're going with somebody who's super dangerous like Chimaev early, if you like make one mistake, you probably lost. That being said, I think if it gets out of the first round, DDP absolutely beats the fuck out of Chimaev. So it's an interesting fight. Man, Ilya Tapora versus Max Holloway. So I made a long video breaking down this one, and I picked Max to win. I did say that I think Ilya could win, but I thought it would be, Ilya probably wins like 3 rounds, and then Max takes the end. Did I see Max getting knocked out? No, not even slightly. I don't think anybody did. I made a video talking about how like Max has basically never been knocked down, even when he faced Justin Gaethje. He faced Justin Gaethje and he got dropped in that fight. He got hit for sure, and it was a hard shot, but it was more of a slip than anything else. So even in that fight, like when he got his bell rung, I mean, Gaethje hits hard as fuck. We all know that. He looked fine. I also said in that fight that I thought Max should throw teeps and I thought he should throw lots of jabs. He did that early on and it was really successful. I think Max was clearly winning the fight to that point. Now, obviously, he gets KO'd in the third round at the very beginning of it. But, like, honestly, in every exchange, for the most part, Max was winning. Max was landing far cleaner, far more often. But, man, Taporia hits hard. Taporia hits really fucking hard. He must hit crazy hard. I heard somebody describe him recently as kind of the featherweight the featherweight Alex Pereira, and I kind of agree. It's like, man, he can just lose rounds, and it still doesn't seem to matter that much because if he starts getting you late, like he will just put you away, and yeah, comes in, throws a left hook, but grabs the arm of Max, brings the arms down, hits the right hand hook. Max gets wobbled, and then after that, it's just they get into exchanges. Why do I think that happened? I need to see the video better. I mean, I watched it when it happened. I don't have it, so I can't like rewatch it and break it down super hardcore. But the main reason I think Taporia was able to land on Max was Max, frankly allowed it. Max started getting away from kicking, which I don't understand why he did. I mean, the teeps were keeping Taporia upright, so as soon as Taporia wants to be down, forward, and in, and he wants to move his head side to side. He wants to get underneath you and work down here. And when Max was kicking and throwing teeps, Taporia was upright, right? He was over his back hip, right? And he had to push forward, so then Max could jab him up. Max deals well when you're at the same range like here with him. Max does not deal well as well when you're underneath him. And so I think that was some of that. And then I think Max just kind of was like, no, I'm winning these exchanges. I'm the best boxer in the UFC. And then, bam, he's out. That's the problem when you're dealing with somebody who hits like Taporia and who's accurate like Taporia is. Taporia progressively gets closer and closer and closer over and over again on those big shots. When he'll miss, and then he's a little closer, he's a little closer, he's a little closer, and all of a sudden he's landing. And when he lands, it just does so much work, So, congrats to him. He has a fight with, I think it's Alex Volkanovski is going to be his next fight apparently. How do I feel about that one? I hope Alex makes a lot of money, because man, statistically, Volkanovski's 35 years old. He's been knocked out in his last 2 fights. again, Volkanovski was winning the fight against Topuria the same way Max was winning it, and it's so weirdly similar in some ways, but they both get knocked out winning the fight. It's like somebody like Topuria, it's like you just have to be on point the whole fight because he could put you away. I know it's not super late in, but it just doesn't seem like it's gonna matter. I feel like he's gonna carry his power all the way through. He never really overextends himself. He did a good job on kicking the calf. I didn't think it would matter. I said that in my video. I thought Max has calves of steel. Apparently, he still does. I mean, it didn't seem like it made a huge difference. Again, I don't know why Max stopped kicking. It's always weird to me what ends up happening in fights, decisions. But what do I think happens? I think Topuria beats Volkanovski at this point. Volkanovski, like I said, he's 35. He's had 2 knockout losses recently. Man, I hope I'm wrong. But Volkanovski could win 4 rounds and still get KO'd. If Volkanovski wants to win, he really needs to turn it into a grappling match. I think that's the move. You tire out a guy like that hits hard. You make it a grappling match where the arms get like really fatigued. You put a lot of blood in the arms. Then they can't like whip those heavy shots the same way. Then it turns into okay, like who's actually going to touch each other up more? Who's just making contact more? In that scenario, Volkanovski could win. But again, man, that's a hard way to go. In my breakdown video with Topuria and Volkanovski, I said that I thought Volkanovski should have came in and clinched on a little bit more. I think the more you do that, the better it is, and the higher your likelihood of not getting like at least clipped super bad by somebody like Topuria. But that being said, Topuria throws really hard body shots. So even when you clench up with him, he'll throw super hard body shot on the way out and kind of punish you for it. So we're moving on to UFC 309. This is the next card that actually has any deep interest for me. It's going to be Jon Jones against Stipe Miocic, Charles Oliveira against Michael Chandler. Those are the main fights that I actually care to talk about. Jon Jones, in my opinion, has done a lot recently to absolutely destroy his GOAT status. I think if you had asked most people 5 years ago, who is the greatest MMA fighter of all time, I think most people would go with Jon Jones. So, why do I think that? One of the reasons I think that is because I think Jon Jones' fights have not aged particularly well. A large number of Jon Jones wins are against people who went down to middleweight and were older. So, while some of those guys are definitely names there's also just a lot of guys that were like 6 foot tall, who fought at 205. Basically middleweights, guys nowadays who may even be welterweights in some cases. Jon Jones has, in almost all of his fights, had the reach advantage, the height advantage, and the age advantage. Those are big athletic ability, big differences, big differences. And he's had a pretty massive age advantage in a lot of cases. He's almost always been the younger guy by about 4 to 5 years. So again, like I said, I think some of his fights haven't aged as well. I would say his last 2 fights, at 205 were super debatable. One in particular, I think he obviously lost. Now, people could be like, well, he didn't, so it doesn't count. And it's just like, fine, but he still lost to Matt Hamill. And then people will be like, well, he didn't really lose to Matt Hamill. He got disqualified because of a stupid rule. And I'm like, well, if we're doing the should-have game, which is what you're doing right now, Jon Jones should have lost to Dominic Reyes. Probably should have lost to Santos. And, so, there you go. So he would be... he would have 2 losses on his record then in that scenario. So, whether you like it or not, Jon Jones has had a defeat. They are currently promoting this like undefeated. They do it really shady too. I fucking hate it. It'll be like undefeated heavyweight champion, because what they want to say is like he's not defeated as a heavyweight. And it's like, bro, he's had 1 fight as a heavyweight. Yeah, he's undefeated as a heavyweight. So what? But they can technically say he's undefeated heavyweight champion, but he's not undefeated. He does have a loss. I know they like to claim it doesn't count, but come on, man. Like you gotta count the loss. So yeah, so competition doesn't look as good in hindsight with a lot of the guys. Has losses, has clear losses that he didn't, or clear fights he didn't actually win, right? Um, and then he dodged Ngannou. I mean, pretty much Ngannou was heavyweight champion, and then as soon as Ngannou left the UFC, he jumped up to heavyweight to fight Cyril Gane, who had gotten thrown around by Ngannou previously. And then again, Dana White acts like, oh, he faced the number one guy, and it's like, dude, the heavyweight division's the shallowest division by a miles in the UFC. Not even close. Like, let's be real. Um, so come on. Uh, Cyril Gane is not good at wrestling. He's not good at jiu-jitsu. He's a decent striker for a big guy, and has literally nothing else. Couldn't defend a double leg from probably Kamaru Usman. Legitimately, I think could take down prime Kamaru Usman could take down a Cyril Gane in my opinion. Um, so there's that, and then also, like I said, he's just dodging Tom Aspinall like crazy. Um, and he's holding up the division. So I think there's just a lot of things that make people dislike him, or make people feel like maybe he's not as good as people say he is. That being said, he's coming out to fight Stipe Miocic, who's 42. Um, I don't think Stipe's even fought in 4 or 5 years, if I recall. I think his last fight was against Ngannou, where he got flatlined. Um, yeah, it's just a fight I don't care about. I hope Stipe makes a lot of money. Stipe's clearly being brought in to lose this fight against John Jones. Mm, I don't think most people care. I guess John Jones sells, and that's probably the biggest thing. I think Dana White is looking for a guy who sells a lot of fights, and I think John is one of the last guys, legacy guys, who can really still sell a fight. But if you're actually really into MMA, this fight means absolutely nothing. He should be fighting Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall is the backup for this fight. So if either of these guys back out or get injured, Tom Aspinall is in. And I'm like, that's not happening. I wish that would be, but neither guy is fighting Tom Aspinall. There's no fucking way. Especially John Jones. John Jones didn't fight Chael Sonnen on short notice, and they had to cancel the card because Chael Sonnen was a last minute replacement. An 85er, a failed champion, not even a champion at 85, a failed champion at 85, was willing to fight John Jones on short notice and wouldn't do it. So John Jones wouldn't do it. So it's just like, come on, man. Like, if one of these guys backs out, it's the fight's getting fucking scrapped, and they're gonna have to do something else. They're gonna have to last second somebody else. It'll be Tom Aspinall versus somebody else that'll knock out in 2 minutes. So, anyways, not interested. Hope Stipe makes a lot of money. Hope Stipe wins. I think John Jones will win. It would be hilarious if Stipe wins. It would absolutely ruin John Jones' GOAT talk. He would be in the conversation for top three still, but he wouldn't be people. Some people act like it's the obvious. Oh, John Jones, obviously. And it's like, it's not as obvious as you think when you start to look at stuff. Next, we have Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. So Chandler sat out for a really long time trying to get the fight with Conor McGregor, and I get it. So from what I know, Chandler's doing pretty well monetarily speaking. It didn't really need to fight. He had a lot of other stuff in his life that was going good and making money through that. So I think he kind of looked at it like, I'm going to get this one big payday, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I do think that it made him look bad. And I hate to say that. I like Michael Chandler. I am from St. Louis. I know people who train with Michael Chandler. I know Michael Chandler is a good human being, does a lot of good stuff. But I think from the world's perspective, it looked like Conor McGregor was kind of like, you're going to do what I say you do. And Chandler was kind of like, okay. And that's really unfortunate. Because a lot of people are like, Conor won the fight without even having to fight Chandler. He ruined his career, essentially, that kind of stuff. Again, I don't think Chandler was really actually trying to fight anytime super soon. I think he was kind of looking at it from perspective of even if I'm just being named with McGregor, this is helping me, right? Because it's making me more. People are going to want to interview me or want to go into business with me because I'm a bigger name, that kind of stuff, right? Just having your name associated constantly, even with Conor McGregor, makes you money, um, unbelievably. But yeah, I mean, so I think he was okay with it. But I do think at the end of the day, at least from the fight world's point of view, it made him look like he was just kind of like, yes, I'll do whatever Conor McGregor tells me to do, which I just think's a bad look. So it sucks. I knew the second that fight got announced that Conor was never going to fight him, never in a million years. Um, why? Because honestly, Chandler is dangerous up front and less so as the fight goes on. Um, and he's very dangerous early, like very dangerous early. And I think people don't appreciate that with him. I never understood the hate of Chandler. Like, if you don't like his personality and stuff like that, that's fine. But like, I mean, you can't not say he's fun. He's not fun to watch. I mean, good God, comes out like a million miles an hour, and he's hurt a lot of the top 55ers to the point where it's like he's almost won multiple fights against guys that were the champion at 55. And that's one of the frustrating things with him is decision making skills can be pretty bad at times in fights, but athleticism's off the chart. He'll just catch guys. So um, Charles Oliveira and him fighting again. In the first fight, he actually dropped Charles Oliveira and basically almost become the champion. And then, in my opinion, just kind of made some bad choices. And that's kind of the issue with Chandler in general in most of the fights that he's been in. He's winning and then he's not. Right? He's winning till he's not. I mean, fuck, I think the Dustin Poirier fight, he was winning that, and then he went for a shot and failed on the shot. Instead of just like disengaging, he went back in for like a high crotch. He got his back taken. It's just like, man, like, what are we, like, why are we making these decisions? Um, Charles Oliveira has, you know, I mean, what can you say about him? I mean, he is just an absolute murderer. He had a crazy run as champion and up to being champion at lightweight. Cut, just good. I mean, he's so fucking solid. He's so solid. Stand up's really good. Wrestling's really good. Jiu-jitsu's really good. Cuts guys, hurts guys, knock guys out, chokes them out. Huge finisher. I think maybe his biggest issue, I would say, of all things, is that like he does get hit, so he gets cracked in fights and he gets hurt in fights a lot. I think there was a joke where it was like when he was champion, there was a meme where he was a Terminator. It looked like he was the Terminator, and it was like a deal, and it was just like, here's the deal. I'll give you a 10-8 first round, but you lose the fight. And that's kind of Charles Oliveira in a nutshell. It's like he loses that first round bad, right? And then after that he wins. And that's the interesting thing between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler is because Michael Chandler is like the king of the first round, and he comes out and just smokes guys. There's another reason like I said earlier, I just think that Conor wouldn't fight Chandler because Chandler would come out hot as fuck and just fucking try to take his head off. And I mean, Conor's not. Conor does not have a lot of constitution, in my opinion, at all. Conor does bad when he gets hit. When he gets hit, he breaks. He can play this like I'm this tough guy, all this stuff, but honestly, like he wilts pretty badly. You saw that the Diaz fight. Just through wrestling, you saw that with Khabib. I don't think Conor takes like crazy hard shots by any stretch. I think he did at 45, but at 55, I certainly don't think he does. And he was never going to make 55 again, anyways. He's roided and drunk and coked up. Guy's a piece of shit. Fuck him. Conor McGregor is one of those guys who won't be remembered well in 10 years. I can promise you. But yeah, so again, Chandler comes out. He's going to be super hot. Charles comes out. He tends to lose the first round. Could be interesting. Again, if you're forcing me on who I think is probably going to win this, I would have to lean towards Charles. I hope Chandler wins. Again, I know Chandler, not directly, but I know Chandler through people. And he's a really good person. and I hope that he does well. I know he's doing well in life, so he doesn't need to win this fight. It doesn't make any difference, but I hope he does win. Um, but yeah, I think if you're forcing me to, Chandler just makes bad decisions, has some bad habits, and Charles Oliveira tends to lose the first round and tends to come back later. And I think that's kind of where it's at. So if you're forcing me to choose one right now, I'm going to choose Charles Oliveira. I plan on doing the UFC usually breaks fights when the cards are announced, so or not when the cards are announced, but when the cards are coming up. So when 309 is coming up, the UFC will put on free fights on YouTube for Stipe, for Jones, for Oliveira, for Chandler. I'll do breakdowns on those fights, and just I'll try to keep them a little shorter so they're more digestible. But it'll probably be the last fight they had. That's usually the way to do it. So it'll probably not in Stipe's case, because Stipe got knocked out in his last one. And I think Charles and Chandler both lost their last one. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to look. But it'll show like a highlight of one of their better fights, right? And I'll break down the things that I think they do wrong and the things I think they do right, and what they can basically do better against the person that they're facing. Hey guys, just wanted to talk about this really quick. I don't actually give a fuck about Mike Tyson's fight against Jake Paul at all. It's a circus. But I just wanted to go over it a little bit just because I think people are delusional. So here's a picture of Mike Tyson and Jake Paul side by side. I think people think Mike Tyson's huge. Like he's this big fucking guy. He's not. He's not a big dude. Like at heavyweight nowadays, he would look tiny. He hits hard. I'm not saying he doesn't, and I'm not saying he doesn't move fast, right? But like he used to be like, I think he was like 6 foot, like when he fought, like maybe 6'1". He's probably 5'10", dude. He's 58 years old, facing a 25-year-old, I believe, in Jake Paul, right? Jake Paul's not great at all, but he is in shape. He has ungodly amounts of money, right? Which, what does that mean? He doesn't have the stress of work. He can sleep as much as he wants. He eats perfectly if he wants to. He has copious amounts of drugs. He has the best training in the world. I Jake is not a terrible boxer. I don't like him as a human being. I think he's a trash, like a literal piece of garbage. But I don't think that like you can't. I know people hate Jake Paul, and I know people love Mike Tyson, which is a whole other thing. It's weird to me. Like, I get you like his highlight reel, but him as a human being is not a good human being either. But that being said, like, dude, Jake Paul is a decent boxer, and he's young. And Mike Tyson is 50 years old, and he looks like this. Like, he's a good looking, like, for like his age, he's in great shape. But he's not in like professional heavyweight boxer shape that he was, not even a little bit. I think people forget, like a lot of people have like this thing where they're just like, he was a murderer, he was killing guys and fucking them up. I'm like, do you want to see something real quick? I'll show you this, because a lot of people forget this. The majority of Mike Tyson's best fights, the vast majority of his best fights, were before 1990. That means most of his better fights were in the 80s. He became heavyweight champion in the 80s, right? I was born in 1983. I'm 41, right? So like, dude, this is his KO loss right here. February 1990 is when he loses to Buster Douglas. This is the big loss. This is considered one of the biggest upsets of all time right here. 1990 February, the beginning of 1990, he loses to Buster Douglas. He is already 37-1 by that point. He is 37-1 by that point. The majority of his fights were before 1990. This is the thing that I just think people are fucking crazy. I can't understand this, right? So one of the things that they're doing in this that's just ridiculous, and this is why I just can't take this shit serious, is the modified rules for the Paul Tyson bout include 14-ounce gloves heavier than the standard 10-ounce mitts used for professional fights. So 14 to 10, right? And you're like, well, that's not that big of a difference. That's a really big difference, right? It's a very large difference. That padding is not being taken out of the whole glove. That padding is being taken out of the end of the glove. That means the padding that you're losing is here. So it's 4 ounces being taken away from the end of the glove. Okay. The other part of this is, additionally, the match will consist of 8 2-minute rounds shorter than the traditional 3-minute rounds. Okay, so if you go to a local show and you watch a professional boxing match, especially if it's like their first few boxing matches, most of those will be 5 3-minute rounds, right? So you'll have 5 3 individual minute rounds. That's 15 minutes. This is 8 2-minute rounds, which is basically the same, right? 16 minutes, right? You got a minute break in between. It's actually probably easier to do 8 twos than 5 threes. Um, I would say it's much easier to do 8 twos than 5 threes. My point being that, like, most people professionally, their first boxing match will be 5 3-minute rounds. So this is like almost, you could argue less than that, right? Um, and people are like, well, that gives Mike Tyson a big advantage because he can burst and so forth. Did you see the fight with Tyson against Roy Jones Jr.? And people would be like, well, he didn't train, and the other guy didn't train, whatever, blah blah blah. I get it, but like, bro, that they look like old men because they are. They're both pushing 60. I just, this one's weird to me. I hope it doesn't get any views. I know why Mike Tyson's doing it. It's just to make money. It's a clear cash grab. Tyson's putting on this whole thing about like, I'm coming to kill him, blah blah blah. There's a lot of dumb people out there buy into a lot of dumb shit. This is just basically a crypto fucking scam from Jake Paul again, and then just Mike Tyson basically being involved and being okay with it too. It's crap. I'm not interested in it. I think it's garbage. Whatever. I mean, if you like this shit, that's on you. All right, so on to boxing news I actually give a shit about. Fury versus Usyk 2, right? This is a big one. I honestly think currently we are in an absolute prime time for some phenomenal heavyweight boxing. There's a lot of really, really good heavyweight boxers out there, and there's a lot of interesting heavyweight boxers out there. And a lot of these guys are having to, I wouldn't say having to, but are facing each other. And that's basically due to all the money coming out of places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia, trying to get these fighters to actually fight each other. So we're seeing finally boxers having to face each other. So we're actually getting this really nice renaissance, I guess, of boxing coming around, where we're seeing the best face the best, and it's really interesting. So this will be the second fight between Usyk versus Fury. I thought Usyk clearly won the first fight. I don't think it was close. There's a lot of people who score weirdly, but yeah. So to me, it was a very clear domination for Usyk. I think Fury was who a lot of people thought was going to win. I think he was also who a lot of people wanted to win. I think a lot of people in the industry wanted him to win. Usyk doesn't really talk. He barely speaks English. That's always a bad thing in these situations because Fury's good at talking. He's sellable. He's interesting. He has a personality, all that stuff. Honestly, Fury almost got knocked out in that fight, or at least knocked down in that fight, and the ref saved him. Um, so, this is just a press conference for the upcoming fight. I believe the fight is, December 21st. So right at the end of the year. It's going to be in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. And it should be a big one. I'm really excited for it. Not much happened at the press conference. The biggest thing that happened at the press conference, I would say, was Usyk showed up looking like Agent 47 from Hitman, which, if you know those games, there's a hilarious reference from Usyk. I appreciate what Usyk does here. He doesn't speak English and he doesn't trash talk, so he's not going to be very good on the microphone if he gets into a verbal exchange with somebody like Tyson Fury. I mean, Tyson Fury's clever, he's funny, he's, quippy, so forth. So what does he do? He shows up like in these costumes, right? He came dressed as the Joker a while back, and then now he's dressed as Agent 47. The other thing he did was he had a photo of him hitting Tyson Fury and basically rocking him, and he made Fury sign it. That was probably the only two big interesting things out of the whole thing. Fury seemed much more, I want to say introverted, but just much more serious than he was before. I have seen interviews with Fury since the fight, and he tried to say that Usyk was it was an easy fight. He's had harder fights. He felt very amateurish, all this different kind of stuff. Bro, you lost. I think Fury just bullshits to bullshit. Like he literally bullshits as a living. Um, he could be a politician. Like that's how much I think he lies legitimately. I really used to like Fury a lot, and then I started realizing how much he is just full of shit. He says things and doesn't do them. He does things and acts like he didn't do them. He portrays himself one way, but he's not. There's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but he just has this. One of the big ones for me, I guess, was him portraying himself as like I'm just a normal guy. I have this normal life. I don't want a big car. I don't want all this stuff. And then there's like photos of him driving like Bugattis and like all these different things. He is not who he says he is. And it's fine. You're rich, man. Do your thing. But he does try to play a bit of a character and a role who he isn't. And I just find that, like, I don't like the disingenuousness of people. I find it off-putting. So, I know you're trying to sell, I guess, an image, but, sell it to somebody else because, I'm not going to collect it. So, anyways, that's pretty much it on this. I'm excited about this fight. I would take Usyk in the rematch if you had to force me. Fury could definitely win this. I'm not saying he can't. He does tend to do a lot better in his second fights against guys. But I mean, Fury's biggest win is against Deontay Wilder, and if we're kind of looking at that at this point, that's looking not like that big of a win, right? Once Deontay Wilder started facing really the top guys in the heavyweight division, he started losing, and now he can't win to save his life. He's getting knocked out. I don't know. Fury did good in the middle rounds against Usyk, but Usyk just kind of puts it on. Fury's getting older. Usyk's not young either, but the thing is, Fury's treated his body horrendously. He's gotten super fat, he's gotten super skinny, he's gotten super fat, he's gotten super skinny, he's addicted to drugs, he's drinking alcohol. It's like, man, Usyk has always been very good about keeping his body together. He's really, really good about staying in shape. He's really good about his training. He is just an absolute unit when it comes to doing the things he needs to do, whereas Fury is the opposite. And there's only so many times you can do that to your body before it becomes an issue. Usyk's also undefeated, so being undefeated, and I mean Fury was right before this, but there is something to be said for being undefeated. It does bring something, and when you've beaten somebody before, you kind of know what you can and can't do. So yeah, I'm gonna take Usyk on the rematch. Interested to see how this one goes, and yeah. So that's about it for me on all this. I know that was a lot. Trying to shorten these up as usual. We'll see if I ever get there. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. All right, bye.